Hello, gentlemen. We're back.
All right.
Just seems like yesterday, a few minutes ago, we were recording, and here we are.
I know it was hot last time we were here. Now it's cold.
Yeah.
With the heat on.
Relative speaking, right, Brad?
Yeah.
Cold for the South.
Yeah. What are you guys doing for the holidays, Thanksgiving, and anything?
Ken takes like 2 months off during the holidays.
That's good.
Right.
Right.
This is the first Thanksgiving I've been away in probably 10 or more years.
You're in e-commerce. You hide during Black Friday?
No, it's real. Yeah.
Yeah.
Black Friday's real.
What do you guys...
Actually, though, the good thing about this year is there's no people, like the supply chain issues, all that kind of stuff. People move their sales up. So now every year, marketers have always moved their sales up more
for some
and more,
reason,
right?
Yeah, Christmas in July is really going to be...
Black Friday month.
How about Black Year?
Exactly.
Black Year, right?
Yeah.
So
Black Mirror Year.
This year, it's like it has to be moved up because people can't make the shipping deadlines because of shipping issues.
Yeah.
Or that's the concern that every e-commerce product company has. So Black Friday is not as big this year.
Wow.
Watch me say that.
Well, yesterday
different.
the Feds came out and said that we had over 6% inflation just in the month of October.
Yeah, it's
nobody's going to be able
insane.
to afford anything, let alone we won't have anything to buy.
Really, 36% if you take into account the dilution.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yikes.
The dilution of your dollar.
Sorry.
So invest in NFTs, apparently.
Yeah, we'll maybe talk about...
Brad, you own Steve Jobs, don't you?
Yes, I do. I just bought a new NFT.
Well, in a respectful way. I don't want to say that, obviously.
It was from a friend.
It's an NFT of Steve Jobs. Tell us about that.
Oh, well, yeah. We actually might have these folks on our podcast here in the future, but it'd be fun to talk about. But a friend of mine launched a limited series of NFTs, and so... I'm just trying to be a friend, and they're cool. So I thought, you know what, give it a whirl.
They do look really cool.
Yeah, it cost me just a fraction, a little shekel of an ETH, a fraction of an ETH, and so now I own my first official NFT, and hopefully,
didn't you own a domain or something?
Yeah,
like
I
that
own some
well?
domains too that are NFT domains, but they're not really worth anything. Probably.
So it's the first.
I just did it for
NFT.
fun, just to
Say you had one.
just to go through the process of it. So
Was it pretty smooth?
Oh yeah, super easy. I have the Coinbase wallet. You can download the app and on your phone, and you just it's really easy.
A lot of people are saying that those will become relevant in the quote metaverse. Meaning you can show off your NFTs and they become tokens or value or show your whatever it may be. Because they're connected and exist in the blockchain, and so therefore that's what the metaverse will be built on to some degree. But speaking of metaverse, that's everybody's talking about that in the news. You look at any tech news feed or podcast, and everyone's kind of putting their 2 cents in. And I think Microsoft came out this past week saying that, quote, the metaverse was going to be their top priority as well, which is weird.
So funny.
But
I mean, I'm not disparaging the idea. It's just the funny that probably the people at Microsoft that said that don't know what it is.
Exactly. Do we? Does anyone?
No, I mean it's an
kind of like
unknown
saying,
thing.
We're going to invest more in the internet.
Exactly.
It
really is Internet 3.0, right?
It's really
it's
just
like
the experience
question
of being
I ask
connected.
is why, right? Like I'm not saying. Okay, the question I think companies need to ask is why, right? Like, why are we going to do that? Why is that Microsoft's top priority? I would love to know their reason as to why.
I don't know. I just know the scuttlebutt. I think too, it's a grand, lofty concept right now more than it is a reality, obviously. So therefore, everybody's jumping on board going, oh yeah, we're going to do that too.
Well, Facebook owns Oculus, right?
Right.
So they may have maybe a jump start in that universe where it's a lot more immersive and more experience than just looking at a computer screen at this point. And, we'll be curious if they could connect those worlds a little bit more. My concern is we're all going to be sitting there with masks on our head and in our own little world, becoming more selfish and more, I'm
going to make a prediction. So you guys, we can hopefully come back to this someday. I don't think the whole headset thing is there yet. And I don't think I think it's going to be more of a multiverse, meaning it's more augmented reality mixed with reality. That's the future. And maybe we'll get to a time in the distant, maybe it won't be that far, into a true metaverse of alternate reality. But I let me give you an example why. Do you have an Oculus? I have an Oculus.
I don't.
Do you have an Oculus?
No.
Okay. It's fun for about half an hour, right? It makes you, for me, who is prone to like motion sickness, it's not great. I'm not going to sit in it for 2 hours. It's fun and it's a great novelty. And I know.
What do you do with it? Like, what do you do with it?
Well, there's cool games.
No, like what kind of games you play?
There's like a Beat Saber, or you're climbing up a mountain and you feel like you're going to fall off. So that sensational novelty. I connect with my son, my oldest son, who lives in California. We do like chats and explore different rooms
together.
And
cool.
in the version that that is a version of the metaverse.
Yeah.
So we'll go and we'll spend an hour or so in there, but it's not something that's pleasant long term for a lot of people. So therefore, I can't see that we're all going to be sitting around with VR glasses on and suits. It's not practical for most people. I don't think that's the future.
Do you think that the Apple Glass is maybe more of the future, where you wear them all the time and there's data that shows up and things that show up that are augmented?
And that makes sense.
In your real world. So you're living your real world. You're just getting a lot more. Like when I look at Ken, I can look at him and I get all this other data on him. I know automatically what age he is, what everything is, what his social security is, what his mother's maiden name is, everything.
Strong-willed.
Yeah, that's right. Enneagram 8, strong-willed, but wants to protect
But
everyone.
I mean, we already do it, right, with our watches. The next step will be something that's a little more augmented reality.
I agree with you in my experience of it. Is it possible? I'm not saying this is a good thing at all. I think it's a bad thing, but like our bodies adapt into some of those things, right? So if now, is it that 3 generations from now are going to be less motion sick, less some of these things that keep the average human being these days from doing it?
In other words, you start training the kids
you
younger
adapt
and
into
younger.
it. Well, I'm not saying intentionally.
No, but I understand.
But like it's like we
evolutionary.
adapt to it, that kind of thing. It's funny. You guys, you've watched WALL-E, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know how like they all, everyone's in a chair. In the future, their bones turn to jello, right? So they can't move, and they're everything's kind of given to them, that kind of thing. I mean, I just feel like that could be. It's like a million people with the headset on.
Yeah, I don't think
I feel that right now. Though.
I think that there will be people that do that, but I don't think that's going to be like Internet 3.0. Like we're all going to do business that way.
Now, I could see if it was Internet 3.0. It's funny because we've talked about blockchain and how that is a progression potentially like the internet of the internet, right? A decentralized version of that. But if it was a version of the internet, I could see how you go from screen to maybe legitimate VR, virtual reality. And so maybe if you want to interact with, again, I'm in e-commerce, right? So you want to go buy something from someone, you could walk into their store, you could look around, you could buy it. Yeah. And while that seems like a novelty now, and I would agree that it is, and doesn't seem practical, I don't know how, but I think it's possible that is the way 50%, 80% of commerce is done on the internet, And that you have to throw on a headset to buy something. Yeah, like you have to own a computer to buy something now.
Yeah. I don't think that's a bad thing in the sense of utilitarian saying, okay, I Yeti mug has a new mug out, so I'm gonna pop on these VR glasses and I'm gonna like hold it. I'm gonna turn it around, pop the top off, look inside, and say, "That's really cool." Like I'm gonna examine something that I want to touch and feel.
You can talk to salespeople too.
Yeah, talk to salespeople. I don't see that as a negative at all. I think that's very practical. But I do think the augmented reality is more of a multiverse, whatever you want to call it, is kind of like we have now where we're wearing technology, but it doesn't interfere necessarily with everything that we do. Like if I have a headset on, I can't do my normal. I'm not going to like walk down the street and talk to someone or sit in a conference meeting with real people while I have a headset on and they don't. I mean, it's just not practical in my opinion.
Yeah.
But having certain type of glasses, since they already wear glasses, or some other type of
just blurring the line.
Yeah.
It's an interesting podcast. That's really meta. There's an interesting podcast by Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, where they're talking. I think it's probably a year or two, year and a half old, maybe. But where Elon's talking about the Neuralink, which again, that kind of thing. I feel like we're pushing the boundaries. We shouldn't really be messing with that. But anyway, that morals and ethics aside, his whole point was there's going to be a point where there's a blurred line between, like, there's just the technology is just completely integrated and inherent to someone's body, and so you're going to have these essentially augmented humans, right? That can do more things, that can talk to each other, that can without talking, that can know things because of some of these integrated technologies. It brings up a really interesting and kind of scary ethical side of it, because you then have potentially, augmented human beings who, can they play the same sports as other people if they're smarter, stronger, faster, because they're augmented and they've chosen that path? And then you have like the normal standard God-given humans and what happens there. And they had this discussion. It was an interesting one. If you're listening to this and you're interested in this at all, it's probably worth listening to that episode. But I think all these things bring up so many questions and issues that really go pretty deep.
You know what? I'm just sitting here and I'm sitting here as my 16-year-old self. And if I would have been 16 years old when, the VIC-20 and the Commodore 64 was out and listened to the conversation, my mind would have been blown. And think about that. It's only been not very many years ago.
Yeah.
Like, think about another 30 years, where we will be technology-wise. It will happen in our lifetime. We'll see things that right now will blow our mind 30 years from now. They're like, man, we could never even envision this.
That's exactly right.
And, but I think there's so much for me that starts to get to the point where, like, where do we stop? Because it starts to get, honestly, are we damaging a lot more of ourselves right now? Are we living the best life because we don't have 30 years later down the road, we're going to have technology that we're going, man, remember back in the day when we didn't have that? Like right now, I hear that a lot. I hear like, remember the day when kids just went outside and played and weren't afraid that they're going to get like mugged on the, abducted on the street. However, they're being abducted online in droves. You know what I'm saying? That people are predators all over the place, but yet we allowed them to be online. And so, like, I don't know. I'm just kind of like in my head right now. I'm kind of thinking like,
I think I tend to feel the same exact way, and I don't think there's a stopping it. I think that's hard to do because just if you look at human history, that's a hard thing to make happen. I think that needs a lot of wise people. I think wisdom is a big part of it.
But do you think that wisdom drives any of this, or do you think it's
no? I'm saying
it's money.
I'm saying it's necessary for it to not get out of control.
I would say we have to be careful when we analyze these things. I have to be careful because there is a tendency to say, okay, it's very black and white. Wisdom is driving it or money's driving it. And that's just not how business works in the most cases. I think for the most part, I think Zuck and other people are good people at heart. I don't think that they woke up every day and say, how are we going to screw and destroy people's brains? I think everybody at some level is going, okay, we've got to do what's best for people and we have to make money. And that spectrum is probably, a bazillion different, colors in between that. So I think when we look at it, we have to say, what's the real goal here? And is it purposeful? And I think in the zeitgeist of today, right now, 2021, at the end of 2021, there is a lot of people. And there's people like the Center for Humane Technology, Tristan Harris, who did, the Social Dilemma, the way that the whistleblower from Facebook, and she is all over the place, all over the world testifying. And So I think there's an awakening to, okay, we have to do better. But I think the reality is we don't know what we don't know. There's no way that 21-year-old Zuckerberg back in 2004 or 5, sitting at Harvard before he dropped out, had any idea of any of these things like algorithms and 3 billion people and what socioeconomic effect. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So I think we're sitting here at the beginning of another thing going, okay, here's the dangers, here's what we don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. And I think if we can approach it that way and say, who are the wise people? How are we as business people going to push toward more ethical use of it?
I just mean applying wisdom and really thinking about it when you're using it. And that's happening more now than ever. I mean, because I know we can all experience that, right? Like first iPhone, I'm like, awesome, that's the best thing in the world. I'm getting that thing. 13th iPhone, I'm like, it's not that I'm not getting it. It's just that, is this all good for me? Like now we have, a better iPhone means more time on it. And like you start to think through it. So like it sneaks in, but now we're all aware of the potential issue, which is a great asset going into some of these future
self-responsibility.
things.
Yep.
And it's driven you can see the trend. I mean, again, in the e-commerce worlds, like the active outdoor product community and the community in general has grown tremendously. It's a huge trend.
Yep.
It's not slowing down. And it's interesting because there is a bit of a, there's the good thing about like human beings, there's always the opposite pull, right? Like if something's going one way, there's a tension and people kind of reject that and kind of revolt against that in a good way, and that kind of, or sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. But point is like that always happens. That opposite always happens, and it's happening now. You see, more people rejecting technology than ever. Again, it's not. I'm not saying one or the other is good. Right. I'm just saying that tension is a positive thing. As we go forward, that tension is a positive.
And I think there's more and more people waking up to that reality of, okay, we've had, 15, 20 years of the internet. And how long has the iPhone been around? About 10, 15 years as well?
15 years maybe.
Yeah. So we've seen the results and we know that we can do better. But we didn't know what we didn't know. Now we know. But there's so many things there's no way we can project the effects of it. Like there's so
just
many,
be smart in implementing it, right? Like, I mean, if you're using it in your own life, really personal, especially more in business. And Brad, you were talking, maybe we can transition into like marketing in these worlds. And by marketing in them, are you, if you have pause about the benefit of this to society, like as a business, are you supporting it by marketing it? Yes, you are, obviously. So what do you do?
Yeah,
I mean, but anyway, like asking these questions about and then participating in it in a way that is aligned with your beliefs is, I think, important.
Yeah,
that's
big
good.
time. I think there's going to be more and more down the road, more and more need for unplugging. Kind of like where there's destinations that are unplugged destinations and things. Because, it's funny. I've been kind of studying my own self a little bit. I got YouTube Prime, which doesn't have commercials. Prime, YouTube, the paid premium. That's what it's called. It's not called Prime. That's another company. I have YouTube Premium, and I noticed that I used to enjoy kind of watching like on TV, like documentaries or even shows that are 30 minutes to an hour long. They're kind of, sometimes they're slow, even if they're documentaries or historical shows or something. And I find myself now wanting to be more drawn to YouTube because they're quick little interstitial videos that I get a quick fix from. And I've noticed in my own person, and what I'm doing is I'm going back to the YouTube because it's like it fulfills me more and it's quicker and I can get all this information very quickly and I can watch a 5-minute video and move on to another 5-minute video and they're complete. So in 5 minutes, I'm done with that video and I've gotten a lot of information from it or looked at it or I was entertained. And I'm watching TV less and less, which is a little more slower pace. I got to sit through commercials. And I don't think that's healthy for me, to be honest with you, because I think what it is, it's an addiction. It's an addiction to information, addiction to quick information.
It's an interesting idea. Like, it's this idea that you're getting what you want without paying any price. Like, the price being like, I gotta wait for a commercial now.
Yeah, you're not having to.
Like, when there's no friction, you just like consume.
Yeah, but I noticed that
marketers and advertisers are doing a really good thing. They're keeping people from over binging on shows.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then again, now you're training your brain to get that dopamine hit and be satisfied within 5 to 10 minutes.
And that's what
anytime you have to sit for longer than that, you get uncomfortable.
And I find myself like, oh, let me just go to YouTube if I'm bored for a second, which I'm not bored, but if I have idle time, I'm like, oh, what's on YouTube? Oh, what's on YouTube? Oh, what's on YouTube? And
Everything.
it's like that's my social media hit.
Have you ever been in? Fortunately for me, my kids are older now. But have you ever been lately in the last 5 years in a restaurant and you'll see a young family and a kid sitting there that's 2-3 years old and they've got their own iPad with the colorful case on it.
Yeah.
And they're doing that.
Yeah.
They're doing that. They're just they're swiping. They're like getting 5 minutes and they stare and then they swipe for a few minutes. Then they stare.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering,
what that does.
What's that does to a kid's attention span of saying, all right, I got that satisfaction, that hit of dopamine or whatever chemicals going on in the brain. And then I'm going on to the next one. And then it becomes a babysitter. And again, this is not judgmental toward any young parents. I know what it's like. But it is a temptation to train and or babysit your kid that way.
Yeah.
That I think may not always be helpful.
Yeah.
No, I would argue not. I have young kids, but it's hard because when you have young kids and they're going nuts and especially if you're a single parent or you're a parent handling all the kids in a situation where you don't have the second parent there and that kind of thing. It is hard. And the challenge I ask myself, the thing I'm aware of that, I think being aware of that is important. Like the potential for that to be damaging, right? So then you meter it, as much as possible. So I try and keep my kids out of technology because I understand the addiction of technology and other things. It's just one thing, right? But even if you don't, that's not necessarily bad. But use it. Maybe you use it as a reward, as a distraction or a reward or a babysitter for a certain extreme situation that's maybe more rare than others. But if you're doing it every single day, all day long, who knows what the effect? I don't even know. Maybe it's good. I doubt it. But
there is some positive. There is some positive, but do the negative outweigh the positive?
Right.
And that's what we have to always be asking ourselves.
So when you look at this metaverse, right? Like there's one way you could look at this. So Facebook changed their platform name to Meta, right? Well, Facebook's one of the platforms, right? So they're Meta platforms, I think, or something like that. And their goal is to go into this metaverse. One way you could look at it is Facebook has no more inventory to sell advertising.
Right.
And so they need to create more.
They need to create another platform or something. Right. Yeah. Also, think about it. They have probably in the world the most data on people in the world collected.
Right.
They're going to, I'm assuming when you sign,
when you go to the
Facebook,
metaverse, it's your house. And you're like, how did my house get here? It's like,
we already know. We already know who you are.
Everything.
We know what you do. We
Set
know
to
what you like.
72 degrees.
It's right. No, seriously. And I guarantee you, if you look at the privacy statement, it probably says they are willing to share any of that data with any of their corporate partners or whatever, right? So that data is going to go to the new metaverse, whatever new thing they build, your data is going to go there. So yeah, if they build Internet of Things, it's going to know a lot more about you than any platform does already.
Could.
Because they have years, right?
It could.
No, but the point is it's more advertising space is where I was going, right? So as far as marketing and advertising, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I just don't think, again, you guys can quote me and prove me wrong. I just don't think that the future is immediately like this alternative universe for the masses. I think you're always going to have a group of people that are like going online, but I think it's part of me says part of me says that this metaverse feels very tired and almost what's the word? Daddish. Like Zuck's the dad who's like,
well, I mean,
hey, let's get a metaverse. And
what
you're
was
like,
the first?
Come on.
What was the first version of this? Was it like World of Warcraft or
Second Life or
like that's 15 years, 20 years
that's
old.
That's my point,
right? And it's funny how that's kind of come around. I agree, and I think we could be looking back 20 years from now and being like, we thought it was, remember when we tried to do this virtual reality thing,
right?
And
exactly.
It became something else. Is the point? Not that's stupid, but it's just that. I mean, it may be, but
we're all sitting here thinking Ready Player One. I don't think it's going to be that.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, this is a better horse.
But that's how it's being pitched and how it's being talked about.
It's not going to be a game. It's going to be something. I mean, the real metaverse is going to be something where you live your daily life, and there's more technology that gives you insight and connection somehow.
Yeah, and I would love that augmentation to some degree in some areas of my life, right?
Yeah.
Like I would love to like walk down the street on a beautiful fall day and look at that red tree and know, I wonder why that tree is red and that one is orange. What causes that? Like, and to be able to have that instantly, I mean, it will make for more intelligent.
Well, I'll be know-it-alls.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, but I have to ask myself though, being that I have data at my fingertips and knowledge at all time, is that really helpful for me though, as a human being? Will I be spending all of my time, engaged in content or questions or whatever, than just living and allowing more organic experiences and growth to happen? Like, is my brain not going to work anymore? It's like, there's this place that you can work out where they put these electrodes on you and you build muscle mass.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything.
You don't have to do anything.
Right.
Is that really good for you? Is that really like working out or running?
I asked those same questions. I think we should all ask those questions of ourselves. But they happen in different areas of our lives continually, right? I mean, in one way, like I got coffee this morning and I did not have to grow the beans.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so there's different levels.
Well, this was the argument too for when writing and books came out. You can go back and look in history, and the original old philosophers were saying, we're not going to think anymore. People are not going to use their brains because all they have to do is go pick a book off the wall and read it and get that knowledge and put it back. And they've this idea of outsourcing your brain. This argument has been going on for hundreds of years. True. So yes, I do think every iteration of whatever that is, writing, language, books, printing press, and now computers, storage, metaverse, augmentation.
I mean, what it means is what it always has been in human history is that the onus is on you as a human being to have discipline and be intentional and understand these things.
Right.
Meaning, like, I'll be aware that, I'm very aware right now that, I have way more information at my fingertips than my dad or any previous generation did, right? And so when I am like, this is how you should do that, and I can't compare myself to that because I looked it up on an iPhone. Like, they would have had to, who knows how they would have gotten information. They're in the little, like in a certain bubble, right, of a community, and that is really all you have until you branch out from that. So, but I think the point is being aware of that, and like, okay, there is a lot I have access to, maybe too easily. Let's make sure that the onus is on us to be like, okay, I need to have discipline and make sure I'm not going to lose the ability to think for myself. Right? Like it's not, we have everything. I think my point is like, it's so ironic because we're getting everything handed to us in a silver platter. And the truth is we have to, in some places, willfully reject the silver platter and do it ourselves.
Yeah. It's self-awareness.
That's hard because like, it's the idea of like, I could drive everywhere, but I'm going to walk. Because I think that's important to keep learning how to walk.
Right.
I could build muscle through, I could lose weight through liposuction, but I'm going to diet because there's something good about the learning and the hardship and the doing those things, right? And there's a balance, but I think it's really easy to just to lose that perspective and just be completely out of balance.
Yeah. Well, to your example of be careful, Howard, but when someone doesn't do that, like the example of like, I'm not going to do what is humanly normal to keep myself in shape or look better or lose weight or feel good. I'm going to not put the work in. What does that result in? It results in weird distortions of human beings, right? Like we've all seen bad cosmetic surgery. We've all seen people who do ridiculous things instead of just like eat well, drink a lot of water, sleep well, and exercise, and don't take drugs and don't overdrink. Like that seems like a simple
Which requires a lot of willpower.
But
It's
it
hard,
does.
yeah.
It's willpower.
I think one of the challenges is that I think with technology is that we lose a really important skill, and that's self-discipline.
Yes.
And I really do believe that it gets harder and harder to have self-discipline when there's things in your peripheral 24/7, and it's like you're at Disneyland, all the time. You're like, there's bells and whistles going off. There's things to see. There's things to do. And I think at times we might also lose the ability to be curious.
Yeah.
And I think that could be, that's also challenging. And someone who's curious but also has self-discipline, I think, is somebody who really is an interesting person, because they're not as few and far between, because those are the people that actually can build their life in a way and do some really cool things, because they are curious, but they don't go down the road to self-destruct.
Those things are muscles that you have to like literally exercise. Like you have like self-discipline, just wisdom and being aware of things, and kind of thinking, is this good or not? Like those are muscles that if you like, it'll be hard at first, and you have to continue to condition them over time. And if we transition that into business, right? Like, so I think, I don't know if, like, the point is like the easier things get, like there's like, it used to be when things are hard, self-discipline is built in to the fabric of how it's done. Right. It's like, I have to get up with the sun to harvest my crop, or I'm not going to eat.
That's right.
Right. So like, so I have to, like, there's something else making me do that. Once that pressure is taken away, then we lose potentially what was creating a lot of other good things that were not the result. Like eating was one of the results, but like the act of working and learning how to work the field and do that and make it grow and all that kind of stuff is actually, Bob, this is like your area, like that journey is the thing, right? And so like, the more things get easy, we have to be aware that we have to build those in ourselves intentionally. And then when you come to business, I mean, that's always been the case in business, I think. Meaning, like, business is you can run in every direction, but you have to choose. I'm not going to go after this thing, which may seem really easy and attractive because I believe this thing's important. And so if we're transitioning some of these skills over into our businesses and into the agencies and the companies we work with, the better you are at deciphering and discerning what to do, and then having the willpower to do it and the vision to say, no, I'm not going to do that thing. I'm going to do this thing because I know it's better in the long term. You're going to be a way better business person. Yeah.
And I would say too, is while we're talking about this on one level, I think too, and I know, Ken, you're a big fan of this, as you and I are too, Brad, is some of the biggest voices right now, some of the people that are talking about the things we're talking about are becoming more and more popular, and people are waking up to it. So I'm encouraged on that sense, meaning, whether it's Tony Robbins, whether it's Brene Brown, whether it's Simon Sinek, whether it's, you could go on and on. There are people that are saying, hey, we need to be more human, and here's how to do it. And we need to be empathetic, and we need to be taking care of our minds and our bodies and our well-being. So I'm encouraged in that sense. I think what Brad's hitting on, and I think it's a valid discussion, is at what point does technology make us less human, and at what point can it make us better humans. And I think the awareness is the key. Awareness of just having these discussions and more people having these discussions. I was listening to Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last, this morning on my way in. And one of the things he said is an addict is somebody who thinks about drugs or alcohol, whatever their drug of choice is, all the time. And it's the first thing that they think about when they wake up. If you roll over and pick up your phone and that's the first thing you think about in the morning you wake up, there's a good chance you're an addict. And I mean, I can relate to that at times. And so the awareness of saying, I'm going to choose to turn this thing off. I'm going to put it away. I'm going to, deconnect myself from certain platforms because they aren't good to me. I'm going to stop watching YouTube for a month, whatever it may be. That's the key. And it's all comes back to self-discipline.
Yeah. And I think it's easier when you're a 45-year-old plus person who has a little bit more self-awareness to be able to muster up that discipline. You see yourself. Like I wake up, the first thing I think about is coffee. I'm obviously a coffee addict.
Me too.
Because that's the first thing. I'm like, don't talk to me. I got to get my coffee. I'm right to the coffee machine. Right. And so, but I think a 12-year-old, is probably doesn't have the ability at that point as a parent or whatever, you have to be the one that has that self-discipline
and model it
and model it, and also, enforce it. And it's not always fun to enforce it, especially when half of your kids' social interaction nowadays is online and with people or whatever, whether your kid's a gamer or whatever, right? Yeah. Or other type of social. And so it's really difficult for them because that's their connection to the world. So you're basically cutting off their connection to the world. When my grandmother, she only had an 8th grade education because she had to quit school because she had to work the cotton fields, and she was out there every day learning how to do things, working with machinery, learning how to not only get crop, but what that crop is worth and commerce and things like that. So she was learning to be a participant in life in our, at an age that my son doesn't, my kids might not know. My daughter's older. She's in college now, but, but I think it starts with the families, and I think it starts with that, and it's really difficult. I'm not saying it's easy.
I think as a business leader, you get it. It's with your entire team as well. And it's not in a I'm better than you type of thing, but I do think modeling the right things. So I don't think everyone is just like, oh, you're just a business person, business leader. Like a leader is someone who intentionally tries to do that and then becomes aware of these things and works at them really hard, even though they're not perfect about it, so that you can also teach that and lead other people in those ways. And just kind of like that as a parent, I'd say in your business, you have to do the same thing. Did you guys
happen to see, this came out this week, actually, Portugal? Did you see that?
I don't think so.
Portugal passed a law. It is illegal for an employer to contact, email, call an employee after work hours. And that
include clients?
Yeah. Well, I know that would never fly in the U.S.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But I think it's an interesting concept that there is a group of people, i.e., a country that has said we are going to value people above technology, the commerce, the business, because we know that that's not healthy for human beings. Yeah. Again, that's a loaded.
How many times do you guys contact your team after business hours? Often?
No.
High, medium, low?
Oh, low.
Yeah, low.
I mean, same.
But it's a culture that we've set.
It's a culture and it's intentional. I'm just saying, I agree with that. I agree with that, but I don't agree with the government putting the law in place. But like, it's really balanced what you're trying to get to, right?
Exactly.
And the truth is like, if you don't have balance, it ultimately, like if you want to be selfish, put balance in place, because the long-term selfish thing is like, that's going to keep people sustained and motivated and doing things. And so it's almost like the most selfish thing is actually to do these kind of things because it helps you, right? Mm-hmm. Like in the long run,
it helps
short-term
everybody.
Thinking is right. Short-term thinking is the other way, but I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, but it's you're talking about parents and kids, and I think it has to be number one ourselves, but then everyone around us, to where we can eventually, it will bleed out into the rest of the world and society of, if we're business owners or managers and agencies, what is the culture that you're setting? Are you encouraging your staff and employees to be connected 24/7 or hours after work? Or are you contributing to that? Right. You really don't have any right to complain about it if you're contributing to it.
All that kind of stuff. And agencies are horrible at this. I mean, at least traditionally, right? Like it's very fear-based. You know, there's a lot of unhealthy, toxic relationships with even clients and those kind of things, how we serve clients and, you know, up all night, up all week, you know, all week and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Tell your clients, you know, we've talked about this before of, you know, we don't respond unless it's an absolute emergency and your site's down. But beyond that, we're going to have to get to it in the next day.
Well, the truth is this is a different subject, but there's very few real emergencies.
Right.
You know, like most emergencies can be avoided with some planning.
Yeah, the internet's changed that, right? We think everything's an emergency.
Yeah, but planning, you know, gets us around emergencies. So
back in the day of the ad agencies, what was an emergency? You didn't have the creative in time for the television commercial to run?
Everything.
Yeah, right.
Probably traffic. Yeah, getting deadlines just for media is probably the most urgent thing, especially when you already have a pre-purchase. Getting things right. Last minute changes by higher ups that they look at creative and they all of a sudden everybody approves it to the very top and then somebody nixes it or it has a major change in it and you're like, oh no, bring everybody back to the drawing board and get something out quickly. I mean, it's kind of intense, so it can be intense. I don't know anymore. I mean, I think we're like you said, Ken, maybe we're starting to move away from that a little bit, but
with e-commerce 24/7,
well,
it changes.
I'm thinking my point is you have to intentionally do that.
Yes,
right. Like
everything's intentional now.
Yeah.
Before, I don't think you had to be intentional. Now you have to be so disciplined and intentional, and you actually have to piss people off. Like you have to say sorry, but no, thank you. We're not available, and you have to take that risk.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do experience often like when you set boundaries, people will cross them, and if you let that happen, I mean. I guess you can't be like a jerk completely, but there is like a very clear communication around it, and it does get awkward. But like if you let that happen, it happens more and more and more. There's never a boundary there.
Yeah.
But especially, I mean, we're all in 24/7. Yeah, you're right. E-commerce 24/7. Like e-commerce site goes down or something like that, which we're not really responsible for, like the site itself. But like this site goes down, like they're losing money, right? If the ads shut off, they're losing money. And there's there's actually maybe a higher potential for someone to be legitimately, upset or there being a legitimate urgency. That's a better put. But look, the truth is like, standard like checklists and operating procedures and those kind of things and planning and discipline, like those kind of things, avoid all that stuff for 90% of it, you know? I would say in my experience, when those kind of things happen, usually it's because someone didn't follow a process or something new, or somebody somewhere just did something that wasn't smart. And so obviously we're humans, we're going to make mistakes, but the more you can create the systems that don't make mistakes, then the better those are. But like emergencies, I just think, they're avoidable for the most part if you're being intentional about that. And ultimately, for all the other stuff, like you got to have those boundaries that are really strict.
Yeah.
And we reciprocate that, right? Like you guys all said, like, and I would venture to say, like most people want to not interrupt their employees' lives. They want their employees and team members to have balance, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to give balance to your team, you need to require balance from everyone you serve. Like there's no, otherwise there's just no middle ground, right? Like that is the reality of how business, it does trickle down as much as everyone hates it. Like that is the way, right? It's all connected. So
it's funny because Apple just created their new iOS update. They have the Focus. Have you ever used the Focus?
Yeah.
So I have Focus turned on to work, and there's a few people that obviously are not in my focus. So if they call me, they don't get a hold of me, and they're like, "Yeah, I tried calling you all day, man. I couldn't get a hold of you." I'm like, and they're all upset by it, and I'm like, "Yeah, okay." I'm focusing. I'm at work. Like we've got to create more and more tools to stop the chaos. Because I'm telling you, for myself, I can tell it makes me somebody who is like,
we can end here, but Basecamp, and Jason Fried, who's the founder of Basecamp, they built that tool because they wanted to eliminate the chaos and the interruptions that most, let's call them like service platforms, project management platforms did. Like they never respected your life, right? It was just like notification, email.
You didn't get my email? You didn't get my email?
Right. So they built that for that reason, and their whole philosophy of their company. And if you ever hear anything that Jason Fried talks about, it's always about that idea of protecting that focus and eliminating unnecessary notifications and communication. So it's interesting, and we use Basecamp quite a bit, and it's a good platform for that.
Do you have a discount code for Basecamp? No,
yeah. Use my name.
Well, we can, it's funny, the Meta, 5 years from now, we're going to be talking about some other issue that the Metaverse is making us neurotic and everything else. But, as an advertiser though, it's like, where do you, because if you have morals, it becomes tougher and tougher all the time to kind of go, okay, where do we need to be? And these are where the eyeballs are. If we want to get people's attention, we got to play on those platforms. But
and you know why it becomes tougher? I would argue, I put out there, you can tell me if you disagree, that it's always, all these things have always had addictive and maybe negative and positive things, right? Going back to TV, radio, all that kind of stuff, right? And advertisers always participate in it. The reason it's harder now is we have not only our own experience, but we have hard data that says that these things hurt people.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And now you have the knowledge of something. And so now you have this onus that maybe wasn't there before,
right,
as an advertiser. And that is hard.
Yeah. And then, it's really difficult because I think as an advertiser, we look also to today's world, we're looking at data, and the data drives numbers. And so all we're looking for is, did we get a conversion and what that conversion is worth? And by the way, we use this language in there that may have not been 100% truthful on our brand, but it was able to get someone's attention and get them through the process and get a sale or whatever, right? And I think that's also a challenge too, is that we're addicted to those kind of things, which sometimes can make us do things that we maybe a little wouldn't normally do. And I think that's a challenge. I know I was listening to like CNBC, and they were interviewing somebody or talking to somebody, and both of the announcers were like, he pulled one over on us. Like he's a genius marketer because it was a switch and bait kind of thing. Like it was almost like a nefarious thing that this guy did, but they actually attributed it as he's a great marketer. And I'm like, when did marketing become,
right,
the same thing as doing something kind of nefarious or being kind of a shyster? Like it's
because we measure everything by the conversion or the sale, and the ends justifies the means, right? That's kind of the mentality that a lot of people have,
a lot of people
take
that. A lot of people perceive that. Yes,
Yeah.
That's not always true. And the truth is marketing is needed because money has to change hands.
Exactly.
If money doesn't change hands, the world stops.
Exactly.
Right. So like marketers help people part with their money, and that's an important thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Commerce,
economics, cash flow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the future, and we'll end on this if you guys want to, is that the future could be a humane certified or a humane system or process that we begin to follow or establish for ourselves. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about. And that's where a lot of people are pushing toward that, to say, is this sales funnel follow the principles of what's best for human beings? Does it not lie? Does it not use certain algorithms to manipulate someone's psychology in negative ways? And, we have a ways to get there, and that's a complicated discussion and debate. But I think hopefully, we look back 10, 15, 20, 50 years, this will be the Wild West.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if all goes well.
Well, all right, guys.
All right. Until next time.
Yes.
All right. And please like and review, share this podcast. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye-bye.